My name is Dave Elmore. I'm the chair of Bike Week Winnipeg. I'm also a volunteer mechanic at the wrench. I'm here to do this video in support of Canadian Mental Health Association's Ride Don't Die program. Please consider making a donation. What we're here to talk about today is we're here to talk about the ABC Quick Check, a quick way for you to look at your bike, check your bike out, make sure that it's ready to ride. So just as the name says, it's ABCs. So we're going to start with A being air. Obviously, we put air in our tires. What we want to do is we want to make sure, especially if you're commuting on roads, etc., that you max that air out. You want to put as much air into those tires as possible. So where do you find out information? Look on the sidewall of the tire. You're going to find the maximum inflation pressure. Pump it right up. That's less rolling resistance. But it's not just about air. It's also about your wheels themselves. So there's a couple of things you need to look at. One, you want to make sure that there's no play down here in the hub of your wheel. So by trying to move your wheel back and forth, you make sure that that hub is nice and tight. The other thing you want to check is to make sure that your wheels are true and that they spin true and straight. When they don't spin, they're going to rub on the brakes. That's going to restrict your movement. It's going to slow you down. You don't want to have that. Getting those wheels straightened might take a little bit of effort. Actually, probably you may require a little bit of help. Let's move on to B. B is for brakes and bars. Let's talk about brakes because that is the #1 safety concern for most people. So we have our brakes here. The one thing you want to make sure of right off the top is squeeze your brake as hard as you possibly can. You should still be able to get at least a finger's width in between the brake handle and the bars. If you can't, then you need to make an adjustment to decrease the length of the cable and to give yourself more braking power. So what you can do is you can use these little adjusters here. They're called barrel adjusters. Now, on this particular bike, they are on the brake itself. And by dialing that brake out, or dialing that adjuster out, I'm shortening the length of the cable and tightening the brake. If you're like most people, you have a brake handle like this. The barrel adjuster is right on your brake handle. Okay? So, talked a little bit about the basics of brakes. Our next thing is we're talking about checking to make sure that the pad alignment on your brakes aligns with the rim. Oftentimes, we'll find as brakes wear that they'll start to climb and they'll start to rub on the tire, which of course can cause your tire to have a blowout. Or sometimes they're below the rim and then they're not making full contact. So you want to check those, make sure they're aligning with the rim, and make sure that they're not worn out. If they look much like this pad, which is quite worn down, there's almost no marks on it anymore. It's kind of like tire treads. Once the tire tread's gone, the tire's gone. Once the brake pad wear indications are gone, the brake pad is gone. So there's your brakes. That's your basics of brakes. If you're dealing with disc brakes, they're another thing altogether, a little more complicated. You probably need a little bit of help. And if you're dealing with hydraulic brakes, even more complicated, you're definitely going to need some help. Let's talk about bars, because oftentimes bars can come loose or will be loose. So what we're going to do is we're going to first check the bars to make sure that the bars don't rotate by holding the wheel between your legs and twisting back and forth. Make sure that that does not turn. Another check that needs to be done on your bars is basically checking this headset. You want to make sure that there's no play, just like there was no play in these hubs. You don't want any play in this headset. You squeeze that front brake, you rock the bike back and forth, and you make sure it's tight through here. If you start feeling play, then it needs to be adjusted, it needs to be tightened. Let's move on to C. C is chain and crank. Let's deal with the crank first. The first thing we want to do is make sure that, once again, there's no play down here in what they call the bottom bracket. So just like our wheels, you're going to grab your pedal arm and try and move it back and forth to make sure there's no play down there. If there's play down there, it needs, once again, it needs to be adjusted and tightened. Anytime that those kinds of things are not tight, you're risking getting wear on parts that are going to be more expensive to replace. So you want to check that. Now, the other thing we want to do, and this is not really so much of a safety item, it's more of your basic maintenance, and that is making sure that this part of your bike, which is your drivetrain, is kept clean and lubricated. When we talk about lubrication, we talk about using actual bicycle lubricants. You do not want to be using the same oil you put on your engine, and WD-40 is a no-no. It's not a lubricant. So get yourself some bicycle lubricant and be reasonable with it. You do not need to spray it all over the place. All you need to do is make sure that these little links have a little bit of lubrication so that they don't freeze up. So that's what you want to do, is just get enough on there to make sure that that these links will move. If you over oil or put too much lubricant on, all you're going to do is attract more dirt, more dust, and you'll be cleaning that chain more often. So that's your ABCs, but I said ABC quick check. So we're going to check something else, and that is something called a quick release. Many bikes these days have a quick release on them. So when you open the quick release, it makes it very easy to get your wheel off. Terrific. If you get a flat, you get it off nice and quickly. However, they can also come loose, or someone may just open it on you. But what you want to do is double check to make sure that they are kept tight. And the way that you do that is making sure that they're tight enough that when you squeeze down, you should have a mark on your hand. It should be that tight. If it's any looser than that, you risk it actually popping off. And our final check. We've done our ABCs, we've done our quick release. We're going to just pick up our bike and drop it. If something fell off, it probably needed attention. If something rattles, you probably need to tighten it. So it's just a good way to sort of give it that last check, just to make sure everything's tight and everything's working. If you're dragging that bike out for Ride Don't Hide or for the upcoming bike week, if you're dragging that old bike out, this is a great way for you to check your bike, make sure that it's ready to go. And even if you're a regular rider, it's still a great way from time to time to double check your bike and make sure it's safe to ride. Thank you.